Let's head to the United States now, where there is high drama for the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Joining me is Professor Peter Matthews from Cyprus College, of course, Professor of Political Science. Not easy. Look, it wasn't easy to get the role to start with, and it's just proving very difficult for him.
Extremely difficult because he's in a bind. He made a deal with the far-right MAGA faction of his party, about 5 or 6 members in the Freedom Caucus, to go along with all their demands, including proposal that just one person could put forth a no-confidence vote and get him out. So he's under that kind of fire while he's trying to negotiate a compromise on the budget resolution to stop a shutdown. Well, the far right wants him to cut some more programs, some more spending, and Democrats, and of course the more moderate Republicans, other Republicans, want to basically take care of this before it drags the economy down. They don't want to have a shutdown. So the major problem here is that just a very small margin of error to work with. They only have about 4 or 5 votes in the House majority, and the Democrats have only a 2-vote majority in the Senate. So it's very close, with one party controlling one house, one party controlling the other house. And this is the real problem here. And McCarthy is caught in the middle of all this, and it's quite a bit of a mess.
Peter, what would a shutdown mean?
A shutdown would indicate in October 1st when it would start occurring. And that would mean that the non-essential workers, federal workers, will be basically furloughed. They wouldn't be getting a paycheck or working. But essential federal workers like the TSA and the air traffic controllers would continue working without a paycheck, a delayed paycheck. And even 2 million military personnel, their paychecks could be delayed, many of them, as well as 2 million civilian employees of the federal government, their paychecks delayed, and they'll be working only without pay. That's very, very demoralizing. And it can really hurt the economy as well, because then you're looking at business sector and Wall Street and consumers who lose confidence that this largest, most powerful government in the world with such a economy to run, the biggest economy in the history of humankind, is failing to meet its obligations to get the funding to pay its bills. It also has a huge deficit it's got to work on. To bring the deficit down and to spend with investment at the same time, you've got to close corporate loopholes and make sure taxation is fair, so money comes in where it can be, and we won't be defaulting on our obligations.
And this isn't even touching on the whole idea of national parks shutting down for a certain amount of time. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because when you say far right wing, you really mean far right wing, and it's just this little pocket that basically got him the seat in the first place. So he really has his hands tied, because if he starts to try and deal with the Democrats, he's going to have a revolution on his hands as well.
Yeah, he's really caught between a rock and a hard place. And this far-right group you're talking about, it's only about 7 or 8 people in the Freedom Caucus and their allies. And this is a problem because then they don't want to do anything. They want to tear the system down, basically, and get us from functioning. And that'll bring chaos, and I don't know what they plan on beyond that. And this is a real problem for the Republican Party, because the party itself, there are many conservatives who are willing to work through the rule of law. They respect the rule of law. They respect the Constitution. These conservatives are people who should dominate the party right now. They should be taking it over and keeping the far right out, because we need a conservative party like the Republicans who are decent, who care about balancing the budget, who care about investing in business and making sure that workers have enough. Those are Republicans that, like President Lincoln, who was the founder of the party, they work in his direction and his tradition. And that's the people that led the party until just a few years ago, especially when Donald Trump came in and took over this and brought up this group in the country, and then a few seats in Congress controlled by them. This is causing real chaos, Tim, and this is really dangerous. Speaker McCarthy has to get control of this and work with Democrats, if he has to stabilize things, along with the moderate and the conservative Republicans who respect the rule of law.
Volodymyr Zelensky visited Washington.
Yes, he did. And what a time for him to come here when he's getting essentially rejected by much of the far-right Republican Party for any kind of aid or help. In fact, there were letters sent by several dozen members of Congress in the Republican Party saying that there's no money for Ukraine, basically. And he's trying to get some help to be able to continue the struggle there for his own nation to be able to survive. And I think the whole thing has to go back to diplomacy and negotiation, Tim. We're not going to solve this through a full-scale war on both sides. And I don't think Ukraine is going to be able to do that either. Ukraine and other countries are backing off from supporting Ukraine. This is a big problem. While the situation is a point where we can actually negotiate, diplomacy should prevail, and they should work out a way to end this war and bring the resources back to rebuilding that country and helping the rest of the world as well that's been suffering economically. We cannot push ourselves to the brink of war. World War I began through miscalculation, as historian Barbara Tuchman told us, and this could happen. World War III could begin through miscalculation as well. If we keep pushing this, and both sides are loggerheads, and sensible minds don't prevail. We got to get a hold of this, and I really urge diplomacy on the part of our own president and the other sides, of course, the Ukrainian president, and certainly Vladimir Putin has to come also to his senses and reach accommodation and agreement where Ukraine will be secure. At the same time, Russia also will not feel any way threatened and not feel aggressive to have to take over more territory and keep fighting with Ukraine. This has got to be done, Tim.
Yeah, I think there was a chill that went through the collective spine of the Western world when we saw Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un sitting next to each other. What was the US reaction to that?
It was quite, I'm sure it was horrendous in terms of they didn't really outwardly let that be known. But we know about behind the scenes conversation. They were very concerned about this because Kim Jong-un could provide a lot of arms to Russia if he wanted to, and Russia exchange would help with his economy, with his energy needs like oil. And there's a mutuality there that between Russia and North Korea that could be to the detriment of ending this war. So I think the Chinese proposal earlier a few months ago to take a medium path and to really come to negotiations before this gets out of hand has to be done. Otherwise, we'll see more of this kind of extremism going on, and it's very dangerous what could happen in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, the Republican primaries, it just looks like every week goes by, Donald Trump looks more and more like the individual that will go up against Joe Biden.
Isn't that remarkable, Tim? I mean, of all people, him to come back like this after losing 3 years ago and saying that he won and creating all this instability and havoc, to still have such a large part of the Republican Party supporting him on the grassroots. And it looks like they're going to vote for him in the primaries unless something really untoward happens that we cannot predict right now in one of those court cases, perhaps, or something new comes up in the testimonies when the trials begin, and that sets him back. But right now, the second place person is Ron DeSantis with only 13% of the Republican vote. Trump has 59%. And the third place finisher, as someone totally new, is Vivek Ramaswamy, who's got about 10%. And the other folks are way behind. Vice President Pence is behind. The other folks, like the ambassador, Nikki Haley, she's way behind, former governor. So this is something that we have to keep a very close eye on and see and hope the Republican Party can get it together, including the voters of the party, and put in a responsible Republican that could run and have a real competition with Joe Biden on ideas, not all this vitriol and untowardness that's occurring right now with the Trump-Biden type of election that could be occurring in the future.
Yeah, there was so much hope amongst Ron DeSantis supporters, wasn't there? But it really hasn't worked out that way. I know we've got a little bit of time to go, but it's been reasonably underwhelming.
It certainly has, and it wasn't really expected because many people had hopes, Republicans had hopes that Ron DeSantis would be able to provide an alternative and become the standard bearer and put Trump aside. But it didn't even get close to that. And he went down from 20-something% down to now 13%. And it's not going upwards. So the Republicans have to get it together and get a candidate that will be viable and still support democracy and the rule of law and might be able to replace Donald Trump. We'll see what happens. It looks like Trump is going to win if everything keeps going like it is right now. And that's a big danger for democracy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and finally, Donald Trump's not even campaigning that hard, is he? He's not participating in debates. He's like from him or from his historic perspective where we saw him in every sphere, very visible. He's hardly been seen that much.
That's right. People know him, of course. Everyone knows him. All of his supporters are gung-ho with him, and that's a large group in the Republican Party. So he thinks he can go ahead and avoid the Iowa caucuses, the campaigning for the Iowa caucuses. He's avoiding the debates. He did go to Iowa, by the way, and he did talk to people there and built up some support. But the debates, the second debate coming up, he's not going to show up for that either. So let's see what happens. I think that the fact that he's so well known and he's known quantity, and people know what he stands for, it doesn't hurt him as much by not showing up at these debates as it would other people.
Might even be helping him, to be honest with you. Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.